Hi, guys. Welcome to Real Food Recovery. We are talking today about a topic that I think will be probably germane to every single person listening out here. But before we jump into it, I must say hello to Jamie. How's it going today, lady?
Going good, going good. This is a good topic.
Good.
Very good
I'm
topic,
I
important
yeah,
topic.
both of us agree on this one. And so, like I said, I think you're going to love what we're talking about today. We're going to explore the transformative power of choice. So, we want to start with a question that challenges our very perception of life. Can happiness be a choice rather than just this fleeting emotion? In a world that often feels out of control, what if the key to a more fulfilling life is just right within ourselves? So keep listening because Jamie and I were going to uncover the truth behind choosing happiness and how this simple yet profound decision can change everything.
Yeah, when we think about, really how can happiness or can it even coexist, right, with the idea of trying to use or potentially even if you feel like you might be abusing ultra processed foods and the downstream effects of that, right? Can happiness can it coexist with that? And let's explore if it's possible to really find joy and find contentment while dealing with the effects of ultra processed foods in our lives. We know that these foods they take all aspects of our lives hijacked, right? They hijack our brains and our bodies and our emotions and our mindsets. So it's no doubt, no surprise that they would also hijack our happiness.
Yeah. So let's start with taking a deeper look at what happiness actually is, which I think is a great place to start. And of course, we can know it can be a little different for everyone, but in general, happiness can be defined as a state of well-being characterized by positive emotions such as joy, contentment, satisfaction. It's often seen as a combination of feeling good in the moment and having a sense of meaning or purpose in life.
Yes. Yes, and happiness is really influenced by our individual personal values. It's also it can be influenced by circumstances and our mindset. But we're going to get to the crux of why letting outside things control our happiness. We're going to get to the crux of why that is actually not recovery in action and why that is actually taking us further away from our recovery goals and dreams, and why happiness can coexist even when circumstances or situations are not the way we would like them to be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if we, look at happiness really as defined as finding the balance between, pleasure and having a sense of purpose and meaning, and potentially even emotional resilience, right? When life gives us lemons, um, that there's so many ways to manipulate our views on life as it pertains to happiness. And ultimately, this whole idea that happiness is really a choice, and happiness in recovery is not circumstantial. It really is just a choice.
Mm-hmm.
So, when I think of what happiness means to me, it is my mindset, and it is finding, even if I'm having a junky day or there's a situation in my life that's I'm not sure how to handle or it's throwing me for a loop. I have to remember that I can be happy right now in the middle of it all, even if something is upsetting to me or there's something out of sorts about my life at the moment. And that's a big thing that I learned in the last 9 months of being really sick with my all of my hormone and mold exposure issues. I had to learn that I could choose happiness even while I felt like my body was reacting really, really violently to different things and that I was doing to it or eating, or putting in it. And I had to choose to be happy even when I felt horrible and choose to be
Mm-hmm.
happy even when I didn't want to do the things that I needed to do for my health or
Yeah.
just to sustain life, at work and life at home while I was not feeling well. And it really is a choice.
I agree with you so much. And for me, happiness is just a state of calm. Every once in I'm just wound so tight most of the time. When I can get to this place where my chest isn't gripping, I that's the ultimate euphoria for me, where I can just slow down and just calmly go throughout my day. There are days that I would think if I could only just sit down and veg out on Netflix, it would be the best day of my life. But I already know after a few hours in, I would never feel good. My neck would hurt, my body would ache, and that overall feeling of worthlessness would start creeping in. So when I'm at my best, I'm being productive. On Saturday, I it was a day at home. My husband was watching football in the kitchen. I was working on batches of homemade tomato sauce to go in the freezer, and we were both just it was just a puttering day at a slow pace. It wasn't a breakneck pace. It was just doing something purposeful, meaningful, enjoyable, creative, but it wasn't in that panicked, psychotic rush that I need to figure out how I can get out of that on a day-to-day basis. But it was just such an enjoyable. That was like the best day ever, just puttering around, existing, doing things like that. But I've developed, even as I've gotten free from the effects of sugar in my life, I've developed a new passion for writing and even reading. I really never could read before because I just didn't have the attention span. And those are things I just could never do with any success when I was deep in the sugar. I nor did I really have the desire to want to do that because I was so preoccupied with getting my next fix. So I even love my scrapbooks and my recipes. Those are all, I have feelings of accomplishment when I do those little creative things too. And I'm always happy after a workout, and I just feel settled down after that. And of course, being with my family brings me the most joy of all, especially when we're together. But that's what happiness looks like for me.
Yeah, and when I think about the idea of happiness, again, I think of the power of choice, and it is, Dalai Lama says happiness is not something ready-made; it comes from your own
Mm-hmm.
actions. I do agree, and when I think about, for me, happiness comes from a sense of accomplishment, or a sense of listening to my body, or listening to my own needs, or asserting my own needs, or asserting my desires, or my intentions for that day, and actually following through, even if I've had to learn a lot about slowing down and relaxing. So
Yeah.
for me, that happiness can come from just following through on my intention to not overdo. And I'm at that place of learning, right, where um, I did a few things a couple days ago that, just were a nice day that I had the energy to do, and didn't really think much of doing any of it. And then, for the following 2 days have been like I overdid it way too much. Like my body feels like I've run a marathon. Very,
Yeah.
very tired, very, very in need of rest. So I have to be very careful that, as I'm healing, that I cannot do too much. And what that looks like for me, might just be what a basic day would look like to other people. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm learning, for me, is too much. So right now, so happiness is accepting, for me, is accepting that I'm not where I used to be, and I might not be where I used to be for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, but happiness is accepting where I am today and not letting the rest get me down.
Yeah, you and I are both doers, 100 miles an hour all day long.
I'm not 100 miles an hour, but I do like to check a box. Yes, yes,
Yeah. And so I'm actually just getting over COVID too. And so that wonderful day I had on Saturday was great, but I did feel a little tired these past 2 days. So I do have to learn to respect my
yeah.
body whenever I get a little bit sick too. But anyway, I
You,
I
you're
liked,
doing good with that. You're doing very good with that.
oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah,
You
I
are.
liked your quote. I've got another one that I like too, and that's the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. And that one really, really speaks to me because I've had every once in a while I'll get these spells of blueness. And I remember so vividly once saying, this is a choice. You get to choose to be happy. You're going to tell yourself you're just fine and make your brain believe it and it'll be so because your brain only knows what you tell it. And by the way, I am not talking about people that struggle with a chemical imbalance. I'm not saying that people that really actually have chemical imbalances should be forced to say, well, why can't I just make myself be happy? Because that's a whole different discussion. But this is more what Jamie and I are talking about is just being a victim to your emotions where we do actually have the power to make a change.
Agreed. Yes, yes. Choosing happiness is it's critical for recovery because it plays a key role in breaking the cycle of the emotion depending on things outside of us for our emotional health
Mm-hmm.
and reaching for things outside of us to feel better. That is what gets us into a place um, of dependence on things that are not our own thoughts, that are our own mindsets, and that can lead down to a place of true emotional upheaval, constant emotional upheaval, because we're putting our emotions on external outcomes or external circumstances are pretty soon running our emotions, and that
Mm-hmm.
is a really miserable place to be.
Yeah,
And when I think about people turning to ultra processed foods as a way to cope with stress, anxiety, feelings of inadequacies, these can create a vicious cycle for sure. They did in me
yeah,
years ago, and they would again if I used them again. It's not like 16 years ago I'm cured of it. These same exact cycles would be recreated if I got back into the ultra processed and processed foods
oh,
again.
totally.
They just would. So whenever someone feels unhappy or unfulfilled, if they're seeking comfort outside of themselves in food, in alcohol, and even other people,
Habits.
relationships,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all very real. Um, these this can temporarily, boost a mood, but it definitely leads to all kinds of negative outcomes, right? Negative outcomes of in your, of course, your health, negative outcomes in your emotions, negative outcomes in your relationships, in your career. I mean, in so many different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you so much on that. So, when we talk about this, we think about how focusing on cultivating happiness and emotional well-being that individuals can reduce that need to rely on ultra processed foods for comfort. Happiness helps build resilience against triggers that lead to unhealthy eating habits. It fosters this sense of self-worth. It encourages healthier choices. It supports a positive mindset. And that is all essential for long-term recovery. If we want to hang on to recovery, we got to have a few of these skills in place. And that's a lot of the stuff that we talk about in real food recovery is skills and tools. So, in essence, finding happiness empowers individuals to reclaim control over their relationship with food. And it creates this lifestyle that isn't dependent on temporary pleasures from that the ultra processed foods offer. It is just a temporary pleasure. There's a discussion about the difference between happiness and joy, and that joy is something that lasts long term versus just that momentary fleeting excitement, I guess. So I know that when I'm eating foods consistent with my body's design, there's just this natural euphoria that comes with those choices. I feel better. Life is a little brighter. It drives me to want to do more, to be at my optimal level of health. I talk about good begets good, and you want to protect that. You're on this trajectory, and you just don't want anything to mess up those good feels, I guess I would say.
Mhm. Mhm. So happiness is linked to, again, improved physical health, which and that I think is the best news of all, right? If happiness is linked to improved physical health and happiness is a choice that we can make, you do the math, right? It's pretty simple to say that it's easy for us to actually choose happiness and feel better for it. And in this choice can counteract negative effects of the foods we eat, the lifestyles we live, the sleep that we get, and all the downstream effects of that, right? It can help mitigate inflammation that we have, weight gain, metabolic issues, not to mention that overall sense of peace and joy that we have. When people feel happier, they're more likely to engage in behaviors and support overall well-being. And again, this is a choice that they can make. So when they have regular exercise, when they have better sleep, And when they're eating mindfully whole, single ingredient, unprocessed foods, these things lead to happiness in all ways.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you look at the choice, happiness being a choice, when we make those choices that lead to happiness, it's the same thing as choosing to be happy, but you're actually just doing something that sort of shores it up for you.
Yeah.
And on the idea that, Paige, you mentioned something about joy. This is just my personal view on it. This is um, it's not it's not fact per se, but it's just my belief system. I believe that, joy and happiness are different. Um, and Paige, you mentioned that joy is sort of this throughput, this through line. For me, joy is spiritual. Joy is
Mm-hmm.
knowing, coming from my beliefs that, there's a spiritual presence that I call God, in the world, and governing all things and seeing all things. And uh, I don't have to sell out, my soul to unhappiness or to despair. I can just have joy that God exists and the universe is created, and I'm just part of it. And so it's my responsibility to choose to be happy when situations in life aren't so great, but it does not disconnect me from the joy I have to know that I have this set of spiritual beliefs that I can exercise throughout, my life, that give me joy, even in the face of unhappiness on a, consequential basis.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny that you bring that up. I meant to share this with you. I listened to a YouTube or a podcast this morning by a guy named Dr. Gooby. One of our members shared it with me. It's Gooby and Dooby is his channel on YouTube. He was a
Oh, fun.
neurosurgeon, MIT trained. In fact, we may need to ask him to come on the podcast, but just spot brain was what he wanted, but he did had, I guess you have to train for spine too. So 9 years,
Mhm.
he's from 20 to 29, he's studying and doing this. And he could see that a lot of these people, their lifestyle, he talked about like our major branches of real food recovery. He's like, they weren't checking those boxes of what they were doing. And when I would tell them to do that, he said sometimes they didn't even end up needing the surgery, but exercise, sleep, relationships, don't eat salt, try to stick to single ingredient foods, all those things that he said that these people just weren't doing. He said, I've never been so miserable. I was so stressed out because, I want to make a change, and we weren't addressing the real root cause of so many of these problems. And he quit. He said, I gained 40 pounds. I told my wife, I don't know what we're going to do, but I'm going to die. If I keep doing that, I can't see myself doing this till 60 or 65. He said, I am so stressed out, I will physically, it's killing me. And so
Mhm.
he took his happiness seriously. And now he's making these YouTube videos with all these nature sounds and things like that. And he's just trying to get it figured out. But his
Good for him.
happiness, I guess, is what I was saying, was so critical to him. It was the most important thing, even if it meant walking away from this very affluent position for himself. But anyway, I digressed a little bit. So let's go ahead and get a little deeper into this topic. While choosing happiness might sound like a cliche, it's actually grounded in solid psychological principles. When we talk about happiness as a choice, we mean that we have the power to influence our emotional state through our thoughts, actions, and attitude, which I believe that so much, that we are not victims to our emotions. We do have the power to make a change when it comes to that. For example, if imagine you're standing at a crossroads. One path leads to dwelling on past mistakes, regrets, negative self-talk, which I can easily do. Believe me, I'm an expert. If anybody needs help with being in the negative, come to me. I'm your girl. And then this other path leads to self-compassion, forgiveness, and positive thinking. The choice is yours. You really can do that. And when I say I know, I've played a game like that before. Like, I don't know if you've ever been ticked off at somebody maybe close to you and your family, and all of a sudden you're thinking about every single negative thing they've ever done. And then you're like, now wait a minute. And then think about the positive things they've done. It literally, it's almost like there's a wave that shifts in your brain. It's just, it's wacko, but it really does make a difference. So when we're talking about taking control of your mindset, it is within our power. And as I mentioned earlier, I can fight the blues from time to time. And that's when I really double down on that self talk. Sometimes I even say to myself, you're fine. So choose to be so. And it literally can snap me out of fun by just talking back to my emotions.
Yeah, and we know that while in recovery, it's easy to feel powerless, but that's when we have to stop and remember we have the power to choose, right? And that really is that choice, remembering we have the choices that step towards happiness. And again, it's when I choose to rest, when I choose to eat my single ingredient foods, when I choose, one the biggest thing that brings me happiness lately is choosing to listen to my body.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the other on Saturday, my body was just dying to be outside a little bit. You know, in it finally is not as hot as the surface of the sun here, so I can get outside and walk in the morning, and you know, it's really lovely. It's really lovely. And well, this week, who knows what next week holds? But the
He's in
it's
Texas, by the
nice.
way.
Yes, yes, I'm in Texas. So I'm in Houston, which is not even really, it's Texas. It's like the tropical part of Texas. So it's very, very humid and very hot. So and summer here is like everyone else's winter.
Yeah.
So everyone stays inside. It's a very, you know, everyone it's pretty outside, but it's very gloomy because you're inside a lot. um, Spring, fall, even winter. Winter lasts like a week or two here. You know, that might get down in the 30s for a week or two, and then it goes right back up in the 50s. So it's, you know, you're outside 3/4 of the year.
Yeah.
Um, but those summer months are, you know, especially July and August are pretty brutal.
Oof, yeah.
So when I can be outside, in nature, it really means a lot to me. Um, and that's something that I will make that choice, and I will listen to my body when it's craving that time outside. And I'll listen to my body when it says we've had enough. You know, we're
Mm-hmm.
done. Inside, you know,
Mm-hmm.
time to go inside now. Time to rest now. There's times, and I've noticed when I have started to eat this, you know, this way of eating, you know, where it's essentially, you know, keto carnivore style of eating. There'll be certain times in my cycle when my body will really crave fat, and there'll be other times in my cycle when my body will crave more protein. And it really is very clear. Like it speaks very loud and clear to me now about what kinds of foods, not necessarily the name of the food, right, but the type of macronutrient combination that it's looking for. And whenever I listen to it and I give it what it needs, like today, it's asking for protein. And given where I am in my monthly cycle as a woman, that makes absolute sense why it's asking
Mm-hmm.
for that. And also given where, you know, as I different part of my cycle, it will ask for more fat, and I'll just feel like adding in single ingredient fat sources. Um, on pretty much everything I eat. But my body will very loudly and clearly tell me when I've had enough, which is also another benefit of listening to my body and staying connected to it. It
Yeah.
really is wonderful.
Well, that plays a big role into happiness, right?
Mhm.
And
Absolutely.
and
100%.
I loved what you said. I'm still laughing about it's hotter than the sun down there. I know it is hot down there. But being outside, nature bathing, I that does so much for my mental health. Unless it's just miserably hot and humid, then all I want to do is
Yeah.
get inside. But I'm
Yeah.
leaving for Colorado tomorrow to do a 5-day hiking, and I already know before I get there, I'm going to be the happiest I am all week, just being outside on a mountain close to God. I mean, when you're on top of those mountains, you're just right next to heaven. So I do know, I agree with you. I just wanted to say that I really agree with anytime we can get outside. There's a lot of studies that show how being
Mhm.
outside, I think the color green makes a
Mhm.
difference in our psyche too. So all of that. Anyway, I digressed again. So if we talk, since we're talking about choosing happiness, if we say that it is a choice, then the question becomes, how do we actively choose that? So let's break it down into practical steps. First, practicing gratitude, starting out each day by writing down three things that you're grateful for. This, when I focus on gratitude, it's kind of like what I was talking before about what if I'm irritated with somebody, I can think of every negative thing or I can think of every positive thing. It's the same way with gratitude. Once I shift my poor me thinking to the things I'm gratitude, it changes my whole outlook on life. This shifts your focus from what you lack to what you have. And it's a powerful reminder that there is good in your life, even if it feels overshadowed by addiction at time. So staying in a place of gratitude is huge for me. I can easily, like I said, get caught up in the negative and my mind can just take off on this wild goose chase. But when I realize what I'm doing, I really try to stop immediately. And it takes practice, but think of all the positives, and it is crazy what a quick turnaround it can do. And I think that happens because our brains are wired for survival, which can sometimes lead us to focus on negative emotions to make sure that we're safe. However, with neuroplasty, we know we can retrain our brains and rewire our brains to focus on positive emotions, but it does take consistent practice. And the more we practice, it will just start becoming our automatic default. So try it as a game. It's almost fun to see how quickly you can do a turnaround like that.
Mhm. Yeah, the second thing we want to do is engage in activities that bring us joy or, really light us up inside. This could be a hobby, it could be movement, it could be spending time with loved ones or family. That's something that, I knew I was feeling a little under the weather last night, a little tired. Um, and wanted to make sure that but I knew that I had one opportunity in the next few days to get together with friends who I consider like family. So I went and just made sure I kept sort of distant from everyone, but I was still there and able to engage with everyone, and it was just what I needed. Um, because again, it's something that you think about what brings you joy or what brings you happiness, and that is for me is being around people.
You are one of those people that you get energy from being around. It brings you, the more you're with and talking, it brings you energy, where some people more introverts and it's a draining experience. But I do know that that
Yes, my
lights your
husband.
fire.
Yes, that my
Uh-huh.
husband has to remember that. Like we were outside Saturday doing some things in the front of the house, and our neighbor friends walked by with their dogs, and we're friendly with them. We really like them, and the feeling is mutual. So it's always fun when we get to see each other. And we were out there talking, and they're pregnant, so we were talking about the baby stuff, and just it's their first, so they're so excited. And we were having just I was having the best time, and we,
I'm hearing a butt
talking to
coming.
them. What?
I'm hearing a butt coming.
Oh yeah. So we got back inside, right? And I'm just like, oh, I just am so happy for them. I just can't wait to, help her with whatever she needs. And it's just such a nice conversation. And I was just buzzing for like half an hour after the conversation. My husband just looks at me. He's like, I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted. I'm gonna go lay down. Or sit down. And I'm like, he's like, that was just a lot. It was a lot of talking and a lot of stuff. And he's just, we're total opposites. Like he likes them a lot. It's nothing to do with the people. But for
Hmm.
him, he's one of those people that he needs to recharge after giving him that social
Yes,
energy, no matter how
yes,
much he likes the people. And he does,
yes.
he really does like them. But it's a lot for him to put out the social energy. Whereas for me, my cup gets totally filled. His cup gets totally drained.
Yes, you are an easy conversationalist, and me, I'm working, thinking of maybe another question or something that might be interesting to add to the conversation, but you're a natural at that. You've got a real gift. And so I kind of lean a little more towards Doug. Like I said, my hiking trip next week, after the hike, I if they want to go out to dinner, I'll probably go back to my hotel room because I do have to just gather my wits about myself and gear up mentally for what is on tap for the next day. I've got to get my mind in the game. I've got to get focused. So I do need my downtime, but I enjoy it while I'm there. But then I know when I got to cut it off so I can show up the next day
Mhm.
for it too. So, oh yeah, interesting. So another thing that we need to do as far as happiness is cultivate mindfulness. It helps you stay present and fully experience each moment. So when cravings hit, instead of just reacting impulsively, if you can be mindful, it allows you to take a deep breath, acknowledge the craving, and then choose a different action instead of going straight into panic. This could be a walk, a glass of water, a quick meditation. I love Jamie's suggestion, change location, just change location, change location, change location. And remember, cravings aren't evil or bad, they're just signals, signs that something needs addressing. So just take a deeper look at what you're really needing. And of course, everybody's heard me talk about my little quick method of putting your hands on your cheek and 3 times saying, "You're okay, you're okay, you're okay." And that helps me a lot to bring that mindfulness back into the present.
Yeah, I want to add a quick story to that. So I don't know, it was last weekend, I guess. My husband and I were, it was, one of the nights we were looking for something new to watch. And I don't, it showed up in my Netflix suggestions. And it was this, and maybe you guys have heard of this. I've never heard of it, but it's a show called, it's like a mini series called The Terror. And I was like, oh, let me watch a little thing about it. And it looked like it was about these old timey, British Navy seamen on a exploratory mission into the Arctic in like the 1800s or maybe, yeah, 17, 1800s. And they were like literally charting a course into the Arctic, to find a path through it. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. This is a historical show. And no, it's not. It's a show about these men that do go there and they do chart this course, but they get stuck in the ice and they all begin to die and lose their minds from lead poisoning. And they hallucinate this like horrific creature that eats them alive. It's horrible.
Oh,
So it's terrifying.
can I suggest Prison Break? I just finished that and that was great. No swearing, no sex scenes, but all kinds of MacGyver moves to break out of
Perfect.
prison and stay out of
My
prison.
husband
So
told me to watch that show, and I was like, maybe. I know it's old, but he's like, I think you'd
it
like
is
that show,
old.
and I was
Yeah,
like,
they've got
maybe.
flip phones.
Yeah, I'm down with that. But this terror show is absolutely fitting up to its name. So it got to the point where there were a few scenes that, again, I watched one episode and I was out. And not only was I out, like I acted like it was no big deal. And then I had nightmares like all night about
Oh
this
no.
show. I lost sleep, like it was bad. Bad. I'm very, very visual and I'm very empathetic. So when I see a
Mhm.
character on a show or a movie getting physically harmed, it's very upsetting to me.
Yeah, I
Deeply
don't
up.
like that either.
And
Which is why
especially
I'm not
like,
going to watch Outlander. Somebody told me to watch that, and I watched it a little
yeah,
bit, and
no,
I'm like, ugh, no, that's a
no.
little too hard for me.
I know some people that can exchange the violence in Outlander for the sex stuff, and they're like, "Oh, the sex makes up for it." I'm like, not really. But anyway,
Mm,
it doesn't cancel that, right?
no.
So I found myself very disturbed, like disturbed for days about what I'd seen in this show.
Oh,
That's how upsetting it was to me. And so I obviously, I kind of had to get myself recentered. And I knew that getting myself recentered included not watching anymore, but that's a given. So I had to just, my husband's like, the next day, like, hey, let's, watch our next episode. And I was like, no,
no.
like I will not be going and watching any of it. And I explained it to him. And of course, he knows me well enough by now to know, like, no problem, but I had these scenes in my head and I had to like sort of bring myself emotionally, recenter myself because they were
Right?
very upsetting to me. And so what I did was I went online and I read about the background of the production of the show and how they made all of the movie moments of the show. And that actually helped me disassociate from the fact that it wasn't real.
Oh, look at that.
Because
Smart.
my little brain, part of my brain was absolutely petrified of this, monster and the whole. I mean, it was very. I think my inner child was running my life for about 24 hours last week, and I once I educated myself on all the behind the scenes of the show, I was much better able to sleep the next few nights. And my husband went on and watched his episodes, and he detaches from that stuff. He doesn't even get phased. He sees it and thinks, ew, but that's it. Like he doesn't really think twice about it.
And well, and that's a perfect example of choosing happiness, right? All the things that you did
Exactly.
to, not going to watch it anymore. I'm going to do a little detective work. I'm going to modify what goes in my brain and eyes and
Yep.
ears.
Yep. Yeah. And even now, like we're getting into in the US, getting into an election season. It's a very divisive
Can't
time
believe.
in our country and in the US, and also a very fear promoting time and a very
Yeah.
uncertain time in the country. And so I'm doing a social media cleanse. I've removed myself from social media for other than my YouTube that I watch or post on for RFR. But anything else, I've removed myself from it for a while because
Yeah.
it feels like the right thing to do. Just
Great
to take myself
example.
out of that, you know, I know what I'll be doing for in my election season, and that's all I need to know.
Good point. Good point.
So yeah, it's about choosing happiness. And again, you don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
Paige knows me well enough, right, to know that I have certain things that I do. I know what she does to create her happiness in her life. And we're an online, group coaching community in RFR, and that's really why one of the main reasons why we built it is because we know that recovery in community, especially connecting with others who are suffering from the effects of processed foods, um, this support is critical. And again, the support that we get from one another, but more, I would say, the connection that we develop with one another puts us in a place, a whole other level of being able to not only see areas in our life that we'd like to choose happiness in, but watching others do it in their lives is a
Agree.
huge
Huge.
and
Huge
being in a
value.
supportive community, it really is crucial. Surrounding yourself with people who understand your journey because they're living their own, and can sort of hold up a mirror for you or love on you while you're feeling whatever you're feeling. That's a big, big plus. And I love Vera Tarman, Dr. Vera Tarman of the Food Junkies podcast fame. She says that, you can't do it on your own. If you could, you would have by now. And she
Mhm.
really, really Dr. Tarman believes in the power of community. She loves RFR for that reason. And we agree with her 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, and once you're deep into recovery, it becomes clear that this is a marathon, this is not a sprint. So each small victory, it's a step towards a healthier, happier you. In the beginning, I knew I only had the bandwidth to focus on one thing, and that was sugar. And that took everything I had to overcome that one issue, that one big issue. So every time I would have success at turning something down, I would tell myself, okay, good job. So maybe today you chose a nutritious meal over a processed one, or you might have resisted a craving that's been haunting you. But these are significant achievements. So taking time to celebrate them, do that. Don't diminish these small things. They're actually, I guess there's no small things when you're recovering and you're making good choices. So every positive choice you make is a testament to your strength and commitment to yourself, which ultimately just keeps putting coins in that happiness piggy bank.
Very, very true. Happiness is just a choice, right? We're not victims of our emotions. And that's the idea of about emotional victimhood is a very powerless place to be. When we think about it as relating to our emotions, believing or assuming that our emotions or other circumstances control us rather than the other way around, that is a really hard uh, place to be, but especially when we feel like others or other circumstances have put us there. And we have to
Mhm.
remind ourselves that we have the ultimate choice to look at things differently, to choose differently. And again, it's not to say that we don't have strong emotions or strong reactions to things. We just want to make sure that we sort of acknowledge those for what they are and allow them to move through us and not really get caught up with feeling
Yeah.
them forever, or
Mhm.
allowing them to dictate our feelings. But again, using our skills, using our tools, reducing the impact of these things on us, that ultimately leads to happiness at a much greater degree.
I agree so much. And we acknowledge that choosing happiness doesn't mean being happy all the time. I think that's
That's right.
unrealistic. So that's maybe one of the biggest points that we might make today. It's don't think that if you're not just floating around on cloud
Blindly,
nine all
yeah,
day, yeah, that
blindly happy.
something,
No.
yeah, that ain't it. I think it's unrealistic. I don't even know that that would be healthy. I don't even know that that would be a goal, but it's about choosing how to respond to life's ups and downs. We don't deny emotional consequences of this addiction, including shame, guilt, helplessness, and how they can cloud one's ability to experience happiness. But we have just come to understand that it's a misconception that happiness is impossible until the addiction is fully overcome. That might be our other really big point. You can feel happy even when you're in the process of recovery. You don't have to wait till you're completely healed from it. Self compassion is a critical part of finding happiness during this recovery process. It's okay to be imperfect, and showing kindness to oneself can pave the way for small moments of joy, even amid those struggles. So, of course,
Mhm.
viewing setbacks is not a failure, but an opportunity as we learn and grow. And that mindset shift can make it easier to find happiness during these difficult times.
Agreed. So again, integrating these happiness habits, right, into your life today, it doesn't always have to start with food choices, right? It certainly they can empower your food choices, and they can follow your food choices, either one. It's not just around the food. I think it's more beneficial, like Paige was saying, to look at the bigger picture of life and to choose some happier mindsets or things that you know create happiness in you, and then that the outcomes might be different food choices or different movement choices as a result. And so we wrap up today. We want to remind you that choosing this happiness is an ongoing journey, and it's really about being conscious and making the decisions that align with your personal values and your goals. Again, if my goal is to live a healthier life and feel better and move better and live longer, then I'm not going to be happy to choose an ultra processed food.
Yeah.
Um, that's not it really, we know it is out of line with our goals.
Mm,
And that would make me unhappy. There is no amount of taste sensation that would make up for feeling deeply unhappy for what I was choosing to put in my body and how it
brilliant.
totally misaligned with my goals.
Well put.
You do have the power to choose to create a life filled with joy and purpose and fulfillment. So we have a couple time for a couple listener questions.
Okay.
Paige, you want to do the first one? I'll do the
Yeah.
second.
Yep. The first one is I only have experienced moments of happiness in the midst of my struggle with ultra processed foods. Will it ever even get better? So we get that, totally get that. At first, it can be a real struggle, but I think as you get further in recovery, your happiness bar kind of bumps up a little bit, a little, at a time. And we know that clean single ingredient foods affect us down to a cellular level. So if your cells are happy, they will literally drag your emotions along with them. And if we had more time, I would go into more scientific evidence about that. But just trust me, if your cells have little smiley faces in them, it directly affects your mood.
Yes, absolutely. The second question is, do you find that certain foods or eating habits directly affect your mood? So again, this is what Paige was just saying, that there are, for me, yes, absolutely. Yeah, the choices that I make with my food, choices that I make with my movement, absolutely affect my mood. And it isn't just about the foods that I choose. It could just be the timing of the foods that I eat. It
Mm,
could be,
yeah.
the timing of the day that I eat them.
Mhm.
I find that if I eat earlier in the day and end, my meals earlier in the day, like I don't ever really ever eat after 6 p.m. And sometimes I'll stop eating by 3 or 4.
Me too.
Um, and I find that I'm very content that way.
Yes.
There are other times that it doesn't fit into my lifestyle, right? If I'm out with friends or whatever, but those are few and far between times. But when I really do look at the type of foods that I eat, the timing of the foods that I eat, listening to my body, and the mix of foods that I eat, all of that affects my mood. And on the flip side, ultra processed foods or all processed foods, eating past satiety, eating at all
Mhm.
times of the day and night, all of that affects my food and affects me in negative ways,
I agree.
and all of it. So again, it is directly connected. Every forkful, every bite we take directly connects
Yeah,
to our
I
mood.
agree. Yeah. So yeah, support your happiness with your fork. Let your fork guide you to greater
There you go.
happiness.
There you go. Great
Thanks,
episode.
guys. Yeah, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much for tuning in. And if you want to find out more about us, you can find us at realfoodrecoveryforyou.com. That's the number 4 and the letter U. Hope to see you there. Bye, guys.
Take care.